Hey everyone, welcome back to the homestead. I just got back from helping a fellow homesteader butcher some of her meat chickens. And I just got, cleaned up and the kids settled, and I figured I'm not doing anything else today. And I thought I would take you guys on a spring garden tour and show you how my vegetable garden is doing, how my cut flowers are doing. Because I didn't record me planting anything. I just went ahead and got everything planted and in the ground. And now that everything's kind of up and established, I wanted to give you guys just a little tour and show you how everything's coming up. So I am walking into the garden now. Let me flip you guys around and we'll show you the garden. So here is an overview of my spring garden. Lots of wonderful green things coming up. I'm super excited. So over here, we have the potatoes I planted. These are all Yukon Golds. And over here as well, this beautiful plant here is my elderberries. They smell so good. And I'm really excited for the elderberries this year because I have a lot coming in. Last year I only had 2 plants that bloomed, and so I got a very little amount of elderberries. And on top of that, I wasn't really prepared for the berry harvest. And I noticed with these, with the elderberries, is like they're not ready, they're not ready, they're not ready, and then all of a sudden like they're ready, and then they all end up on the ground. So something that I'm going to do this year that's a little bit different than last year is I'm going to order some the fine mesh organza bags, and I'm going to put a mesh bag over each head of berries, and that way as they mature and are ready, if they fall off the plant into the bag, no harm done. And it just makes I think it's going to make things a lot easier as far as elderberries go and their timing. So I'm excited to give that a try this year. So as you can see, I've got quite a few blossoms here. I've got some coming in on this one. This one's loaded with them as well. And then these ones, they're so tall, you kind of can't see it. It blends in with the trees in the back, but they all have big, beautiful blossoms on them this year. So I'm gonna have a really good elderberry harvest, and I think the bags are going to save me a lot of the berries this year. So moving on, we have my salad garden bed. Everything in here is doing really well. The lettuce is coming in beautifully. I've got sugar snap peas along the back trellis here. They're all starting to vine up really nice. I even have a couple little carrots coming in, which is wonderful. So this lettuce here, this variety is Butter Crunch. And I really like the Butter Crunch. It has a very mild flavor. It's not really bitter like some lettuces are. It's kind of sweet. And so I really enjoy it. So we planted that this year. And then I wanted to try red romaine. I love romaine lettuce. So I figured I would give the romaine a try, and it is just gorgeous. And then kind of tucked in over the side here, these are sugar baby watermelons. They're the little like personal watermelons, so they're going to do really well growing up the trellis here. The next garden doesn't have a whole lot in it because I'm planting sugar pie pumpkins over here so that they grow up the trellis as well. So those are going to be coming, or I'm going to be planting those either the end of this month or next month. And then we've got onions, marigold, onions, and this is cauliflower. And then tomatoes. I do believe these are the black plum tomatoes. I have 4 on this side of the trellis, so they're going to grow up the trellis here. And on the other side is 4 of the same, and they're going to just grow up and over top of each other on the trellis here and just be really pretty. And then these are my green peppers. They're coming in nicely. I did have to purchase these ones this year because for whatever reasons my seeds didn't germinate. So we did purchase these ones. Again, more onions. Those are doing lovely. And then these are yellow summer squash, and they're coming in beautifully. I did have to, the dust that you're seeing here, this is diatomaceous earth, because I had some problems with ants and potato bugs, as well as aphids early this spring. And since nothing is really flowering yet, and I don't have a lot of pollinators in the garden yet, I felt like it was a good time to use the diatomaceous earth, because it's not going to hurt my pollinator population, because nothing's flowering, so there's nothing here yet. And that was going to help with the potato bugs, the ants, and the aphids. So I won't typically use diatomaceous earth after things start to flower, because I don't want to hurt the good bugs. And so I'm just tackling the early pests with some diatomaceous earth this year. And so far, that seems to be working really well. And then in the corner of this bed, I have a zinnia along with a marigold in the middle. Marigolds are really great for pest deterrents. A lot of pests just don't like the way they smell. So I try to put one in at least every bed. And then zinnias are just great for pollinator attraction. Now to the middle row of my garden bed here, we've got more peppers. I do believe these are my colored bell peppers, but I could be wrong, because I've got a couple back there that are more like sweet banana peppers. They could have been mislabeled, I don't know. And then more tomatoes. This is, I do believe, the San Marzano. And again, there's 4 on that side of the bed, and they're just gonna grow up over this cattle panel trellis really nice. More onions, marigold onions, and then I've got zucchini in this bed. I did have to replant. I've had some issues this year with my seed germination rate, and I'm not sure if that was because of the way I stored my seeds. I had them underneath my desk, and underneath my desk is also a vent for our heater. And so my seeds might have just been exposed to too much temperature variation over the winter time, and so I might just need a better place to store my seeds, and that might improve my germination rate, because all of the seeds that I used this year are either from this year or they're from last year. So they're not super old. So I think it definitely, the heat and the temperature changing had an effect on my seed germination rate this year. So if you're using seeds and you're storing them long term, make sure they're in a dark, cool place over the winter. That way you don't have that temperature fluctuation and that effect on your seeds. Moving on to my next bed here, this is all cabbage. I did some red or purple cabbage this year, along with just green cabbage. These are the surviving few from my seed starts, and they are just doing beautifully. I'm really excited to have some red cabbage this year. I love it in my salads. More tomatoes, another marigold. And then on this side is my green beans. My green beans had a really hard time with potato bugs. So I sprinkled some diatomaceous earth, and that seemed to have stopped the problem. So they're kind of making a comeback. I do think I need to go back through and reseed though, because I've got some sparse areas. And then on this side, I'm missing a bunch. So I think I need to go back through and replant some seeds here. And then this is cauliflower. I did plant the cauliflower and broccoli a little late in the season. They usually prefer it a little bit more cold. And we've had a really warm spring here in Pennsylvania. We usually don't hit the 90s until late summer. But we've had some pretty consistent days here with 80s and 90 degrees and no rain. So they kind of struggled there in the beginning. The last couple of days have been a little bit cooler and a little more overcast, and so they've perked up a good bit. And I'm hoping that they'll do better for the rest of the season now that they've kind of perked up a little bit and are doing a little bit better. But broccoli and cauliflower definitely need planted earlier in the season for our grow zone, which is 6A. Moving along this bed, I've got more onions on either side, a marigold, and then this is Paris Island romaine with a few, I think there's a few butter crunch in here, and red romaine that I had left over from seed starts that I just kind of squeezed in here. There's also a zinnia in the corner of this bed as well. So that is row 1 and row 2 of our garden. At the end there is a strawberry bed that looks exactly like this one, and my kids have been having a ton of fun collecting strawberries this spring. Moving on to this bed, I have Boston pickling cucumbers at the back here. I did plant parsnips here, but I'm not seeing any seed germination. Again, that might be just a problem with how I stored my seeds. I can try reseeding and see if they do anything, but as of right now, there's nothing there, and they've been planted for well over a month. So I think that might be well out of my luck for parsnips. And then I've got more peppers. I do believe these are yellow wax peppers. So these ones have a little bit of a kick to them, so they're really great for making a mild salsa, which I very much prefer. I don't like spicy things. And then more tomatoes. These are my Italian heirloom tomatoes. And so I have 4 on this side and 4 on this side. And then moving on, more onions. I did onions in each bed along with the marigold. And then this is a husk tomato. I've never grown husk tomatoes before, so I'm kind of unsure of what exactly it is because it says husk tomato, but the description describes it more like a cherry, like a sweet fruit cherry. So I'm not really sure. So I'm really excited to see that one of my seeds took and that I might get to experience this mystery plant for the first time this year. I'm really excited because I'm not sure if it's a tomato or if it's a cherry or if it's a cherry tomato. I don't know. Do you guys know what a husk tomato is? Because I don't know. It's not a tomatilla. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's not a tomatilla. It's labeled as a husk tomato, but the description is like a sweet cherry. So I don't know. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments below if you've had any experience with husk tomatoes before. Moving along, I planted some beets this year. I figured I'd like to try them in my salads and see if I like them. And then I believe these are cantaloupes. I didn't have a whole lot of seed germination with them. I only have the 2, but it's probably a good thing because most of the melons are water hogs and they like a ton of water. So having just the 2 of them is probably better than having 4. And then the last bed over here, I've got more peppers. I forget which ones these are. Maybe these ones are, I don't know. I'd have to check my garden planner, but I do know that they are a pepper of some sort. Whether they're banana peppers, spicy peppers, green peppers, I don't know. And then these are spaghetti squash. So those are going to grow up and vine over the trellis here. And then more onions, marigold, zinnia. And then I'm going to do some baby boo pumpkins. They're like the little white pumpkins that are this big. I'm going to do those along the back here on this smaller trellis because I wanted to save the larger trellis for the heavier items like tomatoes, pumpkins, watermelons, things like that. So that is all for my veggie garden. We went over all of the raised beds. I'm going to walk you down the side where my blueberries and raspberries are, show you how they're doing. And then we will walk over to the cut flower rows and I will show you how the cut flowers are doing this year as well. So here are the blueberries that I planted. I did Duke and Patriot varieties because in my research, they were the best varieties for my area, which again is zone 6A. And so I've been working on mending the soil for these guys. I don't think it's mending fast enough because these leaves are really yellow and just kind of lacking the oomph that they should have. They should be this nice, rich green color, but they're kind of this veiny, like yellowy off color, which tells me that the acidity of the soil is not right yet. Now I already did a soil treatment for these guys. I used a soil acidifier for hydrangeas and blueberries, and it was basically just a granular like fertilizer type material, and it said to just sprinkle it over the top of the soil around the bush and kind of like rake it in a little bit, and then every 2 months continue to do that until the pH is where you want it to be. So we're on like a month and a half before I can put another treatment on there and see if that brings down the pH of the soil, which makes the soil more acidic that the blueberries like. Because I really like to have some strong, healthy blueberry bushes instead of the ones that keep dying off on me. So I'm going to keep up with that and see if that helps any. If not, I might need to go a more drastic route and do like elemental sulfur or some other means to get the pH where it needs to be. And then on the other side of the blueberries here, we have the raspberry row. These are the 2 new ones that I got and the 2 that I transplanted. However, they're just coming up all on their own along the fence line here. So these new canes might give me some fruit this year, but we shall see. But they're all doing relatively well. I'm not seeing any sign of disease or like yellowing leaves. They're just super healthy looking. But I did do a soil acidifier treatment on these guys as well, because they prefer soil a little bit more acidic like the blueberries do. So I've been working on getting these 2 rows in particular at the pH that they prefer. So that's just a gradual work in progress. And then I have this miscellaneous bed here at the end of the last row. I want to make this an herb garden, but I'm having a hard time keeping the soil in it. It keeps dropping down, and it's not holding moisture very well at all. It's just very dry. And so I think I need to amend the soil in here. I am using compost, but I'm thinking I might need to mix in some sort of organic medium that will allow it to hold moisture a little bit better, or mulch it really well after I plant it. I'm not really sure. It's been a couple years now since I've had that tiered bed, and it just doesn't seem to do well. So what I might do, I might just pull it out, and I might do more of like the strawberry bed where it's just a square bed that's flat, and work with something like that over the tiered bed. But we shall see. It's just kind of a thought in my mind where I want to have like a dedicated herb bed where I can be growing herbs that I like to use in the kitchen and for medicinal reasons and whatnot. And I figured that would be a really good place to do it because it has like individual like corners. But if it's not going to hold soil and if it's not going to hold moisture very well, then it's not going to be a really great planting option. So this is probably going to be the last year if I can't figure out how to get it to work the way I want it to, and then I might just remove it altogether and do something different. The next thing in my garden is my grape trellises. So I have a red, white, and blue or purple grape here. I do believe this one is a Reliant Red, and it's coming in beautifully. I do believe this one is a Marcus White, and it's doing all right. It's a little small compared to the Reliant, but it's doing well. And then this one here is the Mars Blue, and it's doing pretty well as well. Last year there was a fence line that ran basically through where the grape trellises are, and I had the grapes growing on the fence line. But when we moved the fence line from this grapevine area to where it is now, which is over there, to keep my dog from digging underneath the chicken wire fence that we had separating the garden from the main yard, we had to take that fence down, and the grapes were laying on the ground for a while, and they ended up getting some sort of disease or fungus or mildew or something, where I had to prune them back quite a bit. And I wasn't even sure that they were going to come back this year. But I'm really happy with how they're growing in, and they're doing really well. And even they have some grape clusters on them already. So I'm excited to see how they continue to grow and progress over the summer season. And then past the grapevine trellises is my dwarf fruit tree orchard, and all of the trees are doing really well. This is a gala apple. This is a yellow delicious. We did have to tie these two up just to give it a little bit more support, and so it starts growing in the direction of up and down versus drooped over. So those are two apples. This is a pink lady apple that is just filling in beautifully. This is a Bartlett pear. I love Bartlett pears. They're a really good just eating pear. And then my two cherry trees. This is an Emperor Francis cherry. So it's like a yellow cherry with like a reddish top. And then this one is a Lapins cherry. So this is going to be a red cherry, and it's coming in beautifully. The tarps down here are to kill weeds. When we wood chipped back here, we didn't put a weed or a grass barrier down. We just chipped it really thick, and we've had like some patches where the weeds have popped through. And in an effort to kill off the weeds and prevent it from ruining my wood chips in here, I've just been laying black plastic over everything and just kind of smothering it out with the heat and the sun, and or should I say the lack of sun and just heat. And that seems to be working really well. I've just been kind of rotating this black plastic throughout the orchard area. I have tried a couple different weed killing formulas, vinegar with a little bit of soap. I tried, I forget what it's called now, but it's a salt mixture, and it just hasn't worked as well as I wanted it to. So I figured if smothering grass kills it, then this is going to work well for weeds too. So that's what I've been doing back here. And then the last tree in my orchard is a fruit cocktail tree. This has 4 different fruits grafted onto it. It has peaches, plums, nectarines, and apricots. So each one of these branches here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 is going to be a different variety of fruit. And this makes use of a little space and gives you a lot of different varieties, which I think is really cool for the backyard homesteader, because you can plant one tree and get 4 different varieties of fruit in a very small space. I haven't gotten any fruit off of this tree yet. Dwarf fruit trees take 2 to 3 years after you plant them to get fruit. So we are on, I believe, year 3 with this tree, and it blossomed beautifully this spring, early spring. But those blossoms did not turn into fruit. So I'm really excited for next year, because I believe this is going to have a lot of fruit on it for me. And then all of the other ones that I just showed you were planted either last year or this year. And they're going to be a little while before I get any fruit off of them. But either way, I'm super excited to have my fruit orchard almost complete. I'm waiting on one tree. I did order a peach tree last April, and it ended up on back order. So I should be getting that either this month or July, and then my fruit tree orchard will be complete. And then the last thing in my veggie garden is my little corn patch here. This is in the back corner of the garden. So we've got the greenhouse, the orchard, and then my little corn patch here. I figured this is a really nice sunny spot and out of the way spot to plant my corn this year. I did corn in my raised beds before. I just didn't like the results of growing corn in a raised bed. Just don't think there's enough space, and it takes up such a huge amount of space in the raised beds that are small for anything else. So it's going to grow big, it's going to grow fast, it's going to cast shade, and it's going to take up space. And then in my case, it likes to blow over. So I really didn't want to grow the corn in my raised beds this year. I wanted to use the raised beds for the smaller items that I wanted to grow more of this year. And so with us finishing off this orchard space and getting everything wood chipped, this corner was kind of empty and just begging for something to grow in it. So I did a no-till method bed here where I put down some cardboard and some unfinished compost, topped off with some finished compost, and planted my corn 4 seeds for every square inch, and ended up with a like 3.5 foot by, I don't know, 16, 17 foot bed of corn here. So I'm really excited for a corn harvest this year. It might not be like a year's worth of corn, but this is way more corn than I've been able to grow in this particular garden, and I'm really excited for it. So that kind of wraps up my, let's go this way. That wraps up my veggie garden tour for this spring. Everything's doing really well with the exception of some of the seed germination issues that I've had this year. And again, that's probably my fault, and having it in an area where the temperature is just fluctuating all of the time. And so this year I'm going to be storing my seeds most likely in the basement, away from a heat source where it's just a consistent cool temperature, and things should do better next year, I'm hopeful. So we are over on the other side of the house, the other side of the property, and these are my cut flower rows. So in a previous video, I showed you that we planted our peonies, and unfortunately the peony roots or tubers that I planted did not take. And so the only peony I have here is the one that I transplanted from over by the porch. And so next year I will have to pick up some peonies earlier in the year while the roots are still healthy and get them planted along this row. But in the meantime, I use this spot for some more zinnias and just whatever has decided to pop up. So maybe later on this year I will add some more flowers here for the cut flowers. We shall see. But over here we've got some sunflowers coming up, which are doing beautifully. I am succession planting, so we've got a couple different sizes of sunflowers. So this one was, I think, 4 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and this week. And then I've got one more to go to end out the season. And then on this side of the row, I was planting amaranth, which did absolutely nothing for me. So I've had to make some adjustments where I planted some butterfly weed, which I started as a seed and it was in my greenhouse. And I figured, well, you know, it's a perennial. It comes back every year and it makes a really great cut flower. So I planted them here. And then I did a different variation of seeds. I did bachelor button here, so I'm hoping that that does really well here. And then on this side we've got cosmos. They're all doing really well. And then these are the dahlias. They've done beautifully as well. I planted 13 and all 13 came up, which is like a huge win for me, because dahlias were one of those like intimidating flowers where everybody tells you they're a pain in the butt, but it ends up being a whole lot easier than you anticipated. It's one of those things where I just followed the expert's advice and did what I was told, and it turned out okay. So I'm excited to see some beautiful dahlia flowers this year. And then over here we've got zinnias that go all the way down. I do believe I finished off planting those yesterday as well. Again, you can kind of see the succession planting in the size variations. So we've got like the first round of planting, the next round of planting, and then like just some little ones that are starting to come up. So, and then the last row here is calendula. Again, the same thing with the succession planting. We've got round 1, round 2, and yesterday when I planted all the new seeds. So overall, I'm really happy with how the cut flowers are turning out this year. And I'm really hopeful that they end up being a really nice like side income for our homestead. And then, oh, I guess I can show you the shade garden too. So a little bit earlier this year, I worked on getting this shade garden in as another option for some cut flowers. So we've got the bleeding heart, some columbines here that are starting to bloom. We've got lily of the valley, more lilies here, and in front of this trellis here. And then this is honeysuckle that's coming up, another hosta, the azalea I planted last year. And then, let's see, we've got stilby. Oh, I forget what this one is called. Oh, I do not remember, guys, but it just had some really pretty blue flowers on it that either fell off and it's going to seed already, which might be a very real possibility. Another bleeding heart, more lily of the valley, another hosta, and some more columbine in the corner there. I did have some of the shade garden plants die off. As a, that just kind of happens with plants that you order online. You get a certain percentage that decides to grow and a certain percentage that just decides not to. So I had a couple things in there that just did not come up. So that gives me a little bit of space to kind of drop some other things in there or just replace what I lost and try it again. But it is kind of sparse this year because it is planted this year. So everything should come up really nicely next year and just really fill in that shade garden area. So that wraps up my spring garden tour of 2023. I am really pleased with how everything is coming in, how the garden planning turned out this year. I am going to start working on a fall garden plan because I want to have a fall harvest of some things. And so I need to start having that in the back of my mind because you want to be prepared for the following season, a season ahead of time. So now that we're in spring and I'm pretty much prepared for summer, my mind is starting to go towards thinking of fall and what I need to start getting ready for the fall. And having a schedule and having a plan has really helped keep me on top of everything that I want to do in the garden and with the cut flowers, and just kind of keep me on a schedule and get things in the ground when I want them in the ground so I have a harvest this year. So that's something that has been really helpful for me this year, is just having that plan, having a chart, having something laid out on paper and organized, and kind of getting all of those thoughts and things that I need to do out of my head and on paper, and just kind of frees up my mind to do other things. So if you're struggling to, get your garden in and kind of keep up with all of the when to plant things and how to plant things and where to plant things, I highly recommend having a plan or a garden map or a journal of some sort to write down your thoughts or your experiences as you're going, and then you have something to look back on too for the next season. Because I like to crop rotate, so I like to grow different plants in different raised beds than I did the year prior, and this helps keep down the pest load and nutritional deficiencies and whatnot. And so having a chart or a plan of what I did this year for next year will be really helpful in allowing me to plan things in different places. So yeah, if I have any tip for you, figure out a plan, and kind of map out your garden, and that will definitely help you succeed in your garden a little bit better than you have in the past if you haven't done a plan or a chart or something for your garden. So, well, if you guys have any questions for me regarding my garden, how to make a plan, how to chart things out, how to keep things organized, or just any spring garden related questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I love to hear from you guys. I love to answer your questions, and I love to help you thrive and succeed on your own homesteads as well. And so leaving your comments down below helps me to help you. So go ahead and leave those questions. Don't be afraid to ask. I'm here to help any way that I can. So that pretty much wraps up today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed the garden tour for the spring. I will do one for the summertime and for the fall as well. The summertime garden one is always my favorite because everything is just trucking along and just full and beautiful, and yeah, I'm excited to show you guys the summer garden. So alrighty guys, well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to my channel yet, please hit the subscribe button. It lets you know when new content is up on the channel, and it supports me as a YouTuber and helps me get really great content out to you guys as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button because it helps you and it helps me at the same time. So thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to grow where you're planted.